Hey, remind me to never get locked up in Arkansas. Folks, the story that I'm getting ready to share with you is outright outlandish and signifies the fact that, sometimes sheriffs really have a problem with authority themselves, actually, is a good way to word it. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be a prisoner in a jail in the locale where this sheriff is in charge at. I'm sure that frustrations have to be at an all-time high because what this guy is proposing, he's getting ready to do, is enough to cause riots, uprising, upheavalness, is that a word? Inside the jails. This guy should be removed from his position of authority, proposing such a cockamamie idea. Folks, I want to share with you a headline that reads, "Furious at the FCC, Arkansas jail cancels inmate phone calls rather than lower the rates." What the world are we talking about? Y'all taking the phone away? We ain't even done nothing. This ain't got nothing to do with us. I can't control what the FCC trying to do here. Forgive my voice. I'm battling a pretty severe case of bronchitis right now. And you wonder why cell phones are at such a all-time high inside of jails and prisons. Well, when you got shit like this, hey, calls are already expensive enough. They certainly were while I was serving time. Yeah, let's get us some cell phones up in there. I can see the rationale behind that. Sheriff John Montgomery certainly sounds like somebody from Arkansas, of Baxter County, Arkansas, isn't going to take it anymore. If by it you mean having to lower phone call rates to incarcerated inmates. Why would the sheriff give a damn about this? Oh, you already know there's a reason. When I was serving time, a phone call cost anywhere, what was it? It was like 25 cents for the first minute and then like 10 or 15 cents for each additional minute. A phone call could cost you like, $7.50. I can't remember what the average cost of a call was. I believe it was something like that. These calls could be as much as $15 for a 15-minute phone call back in the day. But if I can remember correctly, there's been some legislation to try to lower the cost of calls because it's basically inhumane to have prisoners having to spend, or their loved ones, better yet, having to spend all of this money just to be able to talk to their loved ones who are incarcerated. And it certainly sounds like this sheriff in Arkansas isn't happy that he's having to do that. Noting that such phone calls are not required to be provided by law. Oh, shit. Hey, this dude belong in Yellowstone somewhere. This dude, I don't even know how that makes any sense. This dude is like on some medieval type times. Phone calls are a privilege, not a right. We don't have to give you phone calls. Write a letter, get a stamp. I can't even imagine what it would be like to be locked up nowadays. Not only asking your girl to ride with you. Hey, girl, you going to ride? You going to be there for me? It's only 5 years. Jesus Christ. But then also asking her to find the time to pick up a pen, find a piece of paper and an envelope, and then go to 7-Eleven or the post office and get you a stamp. I don't even know how much those things cost anymore. You know how difficult it is nowadays to write a letter? We don't even got to worry about this particular jail having access to email, because if the sheriff's ready to take away the phone, you can bet your ass they ain't got no kiosks in the pod or no tablet. Yeah, girl, hey, I'm going to need you to ride. It's just 5 years. Think about that. Let's do some math here. 365 times 5 is... Hey, it's just 5 years, girl. I mean, think about it. What is 5 years anyway? It's only 1,825 days. 1,824 in a wake-up, if you want to get technical about it. Yeah, not only do I need you to, to be loyal to me during that, I'm going to need you to write me a letter. I got to imagine that nowadays people probably don't even know how to write a letter. Sure, yeah, you could put, "Dear John, hey, it's been a fun ride, but 5 years is just a little too long." Sure, I'm sure somebody could figure out that much of it. But where do you put the address or the return address? Do you put the return address where you put the address and the address where you put the return address? Like, it could be confusing if you've never done it before. And think about this. There's people who are watching this video right now who have never stroked pen to paper in their life to write a letter. That is making me feel incredibly old. I feel like I'm like fucking Harriet Tubman. Whoa, that's probably. I feel like I'm like Thomas Edison in this joint. Sheriff's saying that they're not required to provide phone calls at all, so who gives a damn if he's taking them away? The cause of Montgomery's wrath and his March 30th date is the Federal Communication Commission, which set in April 1st, 2025, deadlines for smaller jails to lower the obscene rate for inmate phone calls. Larger jails had to comply by January. According to the FCC, 15-minute phone calls to inmates could run as much as $12.10 in these smaller jails. The commission now demands that such calls cost no more than $1.35. Man, if phone calls when I was serving time cost $1.35, and there actually was a loophole, you could jailbreak the jail phone. I'm going to tell you about that in just a moment for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about. I remember phone calls costing upwards of $12. And the sheriff in this particular case is pissed off that he has to lower those phone calls to $1.35. Why is he mad? We're going to get into that. But let me talk about jailbreaking the jail phone. It was a thing. You know, toward the end of my incarceration, or maybe the middle of those 7 years that I served, from 2008 to 2015, there was a way that you could get phone calls for like 99 cents. And that was by creating a Google number, or having your loved ones out there create a Google number that was extremely local to where the prison was at. You see, if your number was not local to the jail, or certainly not the same area code, that phone call was going to cost you, $7.50, $10, something like that. But if you created a Google number with the same area code, and sometimes it would have to be in the same locale as where the jail or the prison was at, man, them phone calls were 99 cents. Can you imagine what the phone situation is like when your loved ones are used to paying $7 or $10 a phone call, and now they only got to pay 99 cents? Yo, that's 10 extra calls for the price that you were normally paying. The downside to that is the phone lines were incredibly long because people could ride the phone all day, and they're not paying all that damn much. $20, $20 could have you on the phone for a good little bit, $20 a day, that adds up. That's $140 a week. The rates are high in part because extra security is required for inmate communication services. But the system had also become a way for local agencies to make money by charging vendors a site commission payment. I ain't never in my life heard of this shit, a site commission payment. What it's sounding like is like, hey, look, let's say you got a vending machine business or an ATM business, or you got an ATM. Whenever you go to withdraw money from that ATM, you get hit with that service fee. It's probably the same situation here. Hey, you're a phone provider. If you want to provide your services in our jail, you got to pay this site commission fee, which of course we get to pocket. In this model, vendors might be selected based less on what was good for security and for inmate families, and more on how much cash the vendor could funnel to the jail. FCC Commissioner Jeffrey Starks even referred to these payments as kickbacks. Absolutely a great way to word it right there. That's why the sheriff is mad for reals, because he's no longer going to get those kickbacks. Can you imagine what this sheriff was getting per year based off of these phone calls? I don't know how many prisoners he has in this facility. Let's just say it's a small jail and he's got 150 prisoners there, which is a very small jail. That's still a decent little grip. You got to imagine he's making per year. He's probably getting like an extra 10 grand, 15,000 a year. But imagine if it's a bigger jail. This guy might be driving around in some kind of a fancy sports car or some shit, going on lavish vacation. He might be flying on a private jet. All that money he's pocketing from these phone calls. And because he doesn't want to give up those kickbacks, and there's not a damn thing that he can do about it because the law says what the law is, hey, you got to lower these calls to $1.35, and there ain't going to be no more kickbacks. And if there are, it's going to be pennies on the dollar. So now from that 10 to 15,000 he might have been pocketing every year, he might be getting $75. Damn right he's mad. He's going to take all the phones up out the jail and put them on eBay so some sucker like me can go and buy one. There's one right there sitting on those jail bars behind me. In 2024, the FCC finally took a hatchet to this entire system. The commission slashed the fees paid by inmates and banned all sorts of nickel and dime fees that had crept into the process. And it prohibited communication vendors from making site commission payments to jail. Oh, shit. So the kickbacks are gone entirely. And yeah, that's why this sheriff is mad. This dude should be arrested for this. This is what's referred to as retaliation, okay? Because you're mad, you're going to take your ball and you're going to go home. Now with compliance coming into view, agencies like the Baxter County Sheriff's Office are expressing their displeasure and taking it out on the inmates. Montgomery recently announced that he is canceling all inmate phone calls. He knows that this will place a hardship on families, as his press release puts it, but he puts all the blame on the federal government, which is name-checked 3 times in 4 paragraphs. Just because you're calling them out doesn't mean anything's going to change. If the Federal Communication Commission reverses their adverse regulations, Montgomery said, the Baxter County Sheriff's Office will revisit the feasibility of re-implementing the inmate phone system. So the crazy damn thing about it, what this sounds like, is there's not a damn thing that he can do about the fact that these phone calls now have to cost $1.35. And it doesn't seem like there's anything that anybody else can do about the fact that he's going to take the phones up out the jail entirely. At least for the short term. Somebody's going to get involved in this and they're going to put this dude up in his place. They got to. Buddy, you're a dick. You're a dickhead. I just want to say that because I hope you see this video. What you're doing ain't right. Ain't right at all. Forget your kickbacks. I hope they riot. I hope they burn that bitch down. Baxter County Jail. Then what you gonna do? One might expect this view to generate some sympathy in the MAGA-fied halls of FCC HQ, but the commission's 2 Republicans actually voted in favor of the rate control order last year. Look at that. Current FCC Chair Brennan Carr even agreed that inmate phone calls in American prisons were often excessive and that the private operators behind these systems represented a market failure. He then voted for straight up old school price caps. Good shit, man. Good shit. I like this. But I don't like the fact that they're getting rid of these phones. In fact, Carr went on to offer a robust defense of inmate calling, saying, I often heard from families who experienced firsthand the difficulties of maintaining contact with their incarcerated loved ones. I also heard from formerly incarcerated individuals who underscored the decline in mental and emotional health that can result from a lack of external communications. Beyond that, studies have repeatedly shown that increased communication between incarcerated people and their families, friends, and other outside resources helps to reduce recidivism rates. But do you think that the sheriff gives a damn about that? Hell no. He don't want to see the recidivism rates lower, which means the chance of somebody who's being released get incarcerated again. He doesn't want to see that. Job security for him is keeping that jail full up. And you got to think about this. If they're taking away his ability to charge on these phone calls and get the kickbacks there, wait till you see what he's about to do to those commissary prices and everything else. Your visits to medical. Straight up, some sort of humanitarian group should get involved and shut this dude down. You need to dethrone this son of a bitch because he ain't nothing but toxic for the freaking community. Baxter County claims that the FCC decision means that phone services are no longer feasible. In 2018, however, when Baxter County wanted to expand its jail and didn't have the cash, officials found a way to make it feasible by asking voters to approve a 1-cent sales tax collected between April and September of that year. You can even watch a time-lapse video of the jail expansion being built. Damn, they got a YouTube channel. Feasibility, it turns out, is often in the eye of the beholder. Damn, man. They was taxing, citizens a whole ass extra penny on anything that they were buying just to build an expansion on the jail. So it turns out they probably got a lot more than 150 prisoners in that little small town jail. Montgomery did say that he would add some additional in-person visiting hours at the jail to compensate for the lack of phone calls. Well, good for that. And last week, his office posted the new schedule. But as positive as in-person contact can be in a busy world, it is still nice to have the option of a reasonably priced phone call. You know, the kind that's feasible to offer at most other jails in the U.S. Boy, that was a nice little twist of the knife in the wound right there. Hitting him with that feasible term. Folks, absolutely appalling what is taking place in this locale. And again, remind me to never commit no crime in old Baxter County, Arkansas. If you ever been out there and you know anything about it, comment down below. I'd love to hear what you got to say about this place. And hopefully change is coming down the pike and this dude gonna get the hell up out the way. Because realistically, it's not about whether or not these phone calls are feasible anymore. It is entirely about the fact that the kickbacks are gone. Hope you enjoyed this. Let me know exactly what you think. And as always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted and make the most of every day. Peace.